Turning our attention overseas, our president's overseas, the administration's overseas, the NATO summit that's occurring. Of course, a lot of attention on that summit is on Ukraine. I wanted to bring in Rick Grenell, our Senior Advisor to the ACLJ. And Rick, just kind of right off the bat, there's been this back and forth at this NATO summit. Zelensky and the Ukrainians aren't happy that they're not on a current path to becoming a member of NATO, but NATO did come out with a kind of this joint statement saying that Ukraine's future is in NATO. So there's this kind of back and forth. NATO's been pretty supportive of Ukraine. What just kind of your reaction to this initial, the main focus obviously is the war that's in Europe.
Well, look, there's a war going on. And so adding Ukraine to NATO membership means that all of NATO then would have to send troops and treat it like an attack on the United States or Great Britain or Turkey. So I think nations are being hesitant to immediately say, okay, you're a part of us and we're going to war, because it is a call for war and a call for troops, American troops and other troops in Ukraine to help them fight. That is the obvious move and decision if you add Ukraine to NATO. Look, my position is that we only have 8 out of 31 countries in NATO that are paying their 2% obligation. In 2014, in Wales, when NATO met, they agreed to all get to 2% of their GDP spending on defense. That gave them 10 years, from 2014 to 2024, to get their act together and start spending. They gave them a 10-year slide to prepare for the 2%. We still aren't seeing countries do that. Not only, I think Americans know now that Germany's not paying, the largest economy in Europe, but where's Canada? Canada's not paying. Why is it that Canada isn't paying their fair share? They're a very wealthy nation. This is something that really irks, I think, Americans. When you extend the security umbrella and you add more countries to NATO when the current ones aren't paying their fair share, what you're doing is asking the American taxpayer to pay even more. And this idea of burden sharing is not real.
This doesn't get a ton of, we kind of get attention on it in our media for like the 2 days that it goes on, and then you hear a couple headlines, the media moves on, because sometimes the U.S., just the attention span on it or the understanding of the importance of it or the seriousness of it isn't there, and so the news doesn't spend the time on it necessarily. What do you make of Turkey deciding to drop their objection to Sweden joining, which was another one that Russia was heavily objecting to, and now Turkey's dropped that objection. So there is news out of NATO that there is a new country, like you said, that is joining in the midst of the conflict. They're not in a conflict, but certainly it's one that is, I guess, somewhat provocative to Russia. But Turkey decided, even though they've got a pretty good relationship with the Russians, that they weren't going to object anymore.
Look, they've been in negotiations with the Swedes for a while, trying to ask for different things and assurances. So I think this took a while, and they finally came around to saying that they're not going to object. Turkey is an important member of NATO. They've been a member of NATO since 1952. I think a lot of people are surprised by that. But the Turks have a very serious military, and they need to be able to step up and pay even more because they're a serious member and they're a long-term member. I'd like to see greater burden sharing, and I know that Erdogan, the president of Turkey, has said that, articulated that. It remains to be seen how Turkey is going to view these additional members that are being talked about, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Ukraine, and others. Look, I think that we should stop adding new members right now and concentrate on getting the current members up to speed.
Funding up to speed first. I mean, it is one of those things. I think what Americans need to understand is we are the brunt of this we are paying through, whether through our economy, through our taxpayer dollars, and so we shouldn't shy away from paying close attention to what happens. Also, Rick, I mean, there's always, I think, fair criticism of how our leaders look at these meetings, because I think that's very important to the world that does view these meetings. I mean, we might not spend as much time on it as in our media, but we know that these images of these world leaders together are all over world news this week, and especially these couple of days. President Biden has started out this trip, it was fairly weak with King Charles, just kind of sad looking, honestly. And then with Erdogan today, I mean, he's literally reading notes to say not even any details, nothing real specific, just to say, thank you for being here, Mr. President. It's good to see you again. And like to start a meeting. And literally the whole time he's looking down at his legs, and he's got his notepad, his note cards there.
Mr. President, it's good to see you again. Delight to be with you. And, we're in this historic summit meeting. We're resolving a lot of things, I hope. And we made all the more historic by the agreement you reached yesterday and the addition of Sweden and how you're going to proceed. I want to thank you for your...
I would just like, your reaction, like how the world reacts to that, not just how we react to it as Americans looking weak, but the world must also see like this just doesn't seem like he's in charge.
Look, I've traveled the world these last couple of years, met with individual leaders of countries pretty consistently. And the reality is that they do complain about the weakness of Biden, and they make fun of him. And that is irritating for an American to hear. It's frustrating. The fact is, Jordan, that Joe Biden can't have a real-time discussion. He can't go back and forth and respond in real time. He can only read statements, one-way conversations, which is why he skipped the dinner. When it gets to be late night and all the leaders are at dinner, and that's where a lot of real work is done because there's a lot of back and forth without cameras. Joe Biden can't do that. He's either tired or too old or incapable of actually responding in real time, and so he skipped the dinner. I think that has grave consequences for the United States.
It's important to point out. I mean, even that note, just those kind of things that might be off camera, like you said, but we all know, I mean, in any kind of real deals, it's not going to happen when the media's in the room. It's going to happen off camera, behind closed doors, in a different kind of more casual maybe setting where you can actually speak your mind, talk, and know that the cameras aren't there, and he's not even there. I mean, that just shows you we're the country paying for all of this for the most part, putting the most money in, and our leaders not even with the other leaders. I wanted to go to something domestic too. We have Christopher Wray's testifying today on Capitol Hill. It always gets a lot of attention. He's kind of doing what we've got used to him doing as head of the FBI, which is basically saying, listen, the FBI is great. This time it was interesting. He kind of said, he started his opening statement, Rick, with, listen, we do all this other work, so don't judge us over the two things that you may pay a lot of attention to. But I mean, if they're the two most important investigations you're doing, one of maybe a former president and a current president, of course, you better be getting those right.
Yeah, look, some of the big stuff he's not getting right. The leadership of the FBI, I think, are not serving the individuals of the FBI who many are great Americans and want to see their agency protect America without partisan investigations. And I think that they've failed. Chris Wray needs to understand that the credibility of the FBI falls on his shoulders. And when he stumbles, and I think he should resign. I think that the leadership should resign for the good of the Bureau.
I mean, that's the thing I take away, Rick, is that ultimately here, we know that the FBI is full of people that are doing good work. And we've seen from whistleblowers, I mean, they're complaining about how they're being treated to try and do good work. But if your most high-profile investigations, like you said, look so partisan and so like we start talking about two-tier system of justice like that's normal in the United States of America or something we've got to accept, that your whole institution will be judged by that. You can't really tell us, well, there's all this other great work that we're doing, but the two things that are going to get the most headlines, we screw up every time. That is not a good answer, but that is his entire testimony today, basically, is you're focusing too much on how we investigated Donald Trump or Mar-a-Lago or how we investigated Hunter Biden and not about the other work that they're doing. I think the issue hasn't been the other work that they're doing. It's that they're maybe not focused enough on the other work and too focused on politics.
Look, I think that Director Wray misses so many moments and misses opportunities to give the public the assurances that they are credible and nonpartisan. Today, for instance, when Republicans were really pressing hard, he failed multiple times to actually step up and say, look, I take your criticism. I'm trying to be transparent here, but we are working hard to not be partisan. He doesn't say that. He fights with the Republicans, he pushes back, and then he sits there while Democrats really compliment the work of the FBI leadership as they weaponize their power against the government. Well, I think against the people. I think we've got to make it perfectly clear that government right now, big government, is supported by Democrats, and they don't want to push back. They don't want reform. They like the aggressiveness, the partisanship that DOJ and the FBI are giving. That is scary for anyone who's listening to us who feels like they want a check and a balance on the system. You're not getting it when you vote for these Democrats.
The head of the FBI sitting there testifying and being praised by one party in the hearing, and the other party is saying, well, how horrible the work you're doing. The other party saying, oh, we love that work because you're going after our opponents. I mean, that's when you say, okay, that whole system, it doesn't work. Like we need major reform. Rick, as always, we appreciate you joining us.